You must know how AI works. You must know the difference between what AI is good for and what you're good for. You've got to start using ChatGPT to your advantage. You've got to start using ChatGPT to its full potential. Humans are good at 0 to 1, where AI can do the job from 1 plus. You should just let it. We all have an opportunity to grab hold of and maximize what our future looks like. You have a responsibility then to figure out how to pivot, how to adjust, how to reskill yourself. I want to talk to you today about how to use ChatGPT effectively for a number of use cases, but more in specific, I want to talk about how you can use it if you're in the world of marketing, how to use ChatGPT effectively if you're in writing, if you're a writer, how to use it in work, in your workplace on a daily basis. How do you use it in your daily, everyday life? How do you really take this new technology, this transformational window of time that we're in, that we all have an opportunity to grab hold of and maximize what our future looks like? How do you use tools like ChatGPT effectively to take it for your advantage and to use it to its full potential? I remember hearing about ChatGPT around December of 2022. And I remember getting a notification from 3 or 4 people over a couple of weeks. And for me, that's a sign that I better pay attention, because the people that are in my network that would send me that message, I know that they're credible. I know that they don't chase rabbit holes, they don't chase foxes, they don't chase squirrels. That when I get a message from them, either or I send them one, we know it's serious. And that was a time when we knew it was serious and we started diving in. A couple of friends of mine, now over the last 16 months, from the agency operational management standpoint, and then from everything we're going to talk about here shortly, we went all in and we were like, what is this thing? What is it about? What is it capable of? What does the future hold? And we went all in. Doesn't mean we have it all figured out. What I'm going to share with you today, and what I want to get out of, what I want you to walk away with today, is a framework that I am using and I'm teaching and I'm sharing, that is working consistently to really maximize your effectiveness. And I'm going to speak specifically about ChatGPT today. I would imagine you can and should be using this on Claude. I'm imagining you can use this on Gemini. We have been more closely tied in with ChatGPT. That being said, Claude is fantastic. Gemini, which is Bard's product, is fantastic. And I'd imagine you're going to be able to use this inside the Copilot environment inside of Microsoft's world. I want you to walk away with a framework of 7 steps, or a framework of 7 items for how you can work with and approach your next set of discussions with ChatGPT more effectively. I'll give you an 8th idea bonus. But before we jump into that, I want to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is about AI taking jobs, AI replacing jobs. What careers are going to be most affected? If you look around the headlines and you look around the news, which of course the news companies do a great job of, which is to place fear and uncertainty in the minds of the average worker. And now what I want to share with you is, there is no way to predict for sure what jobs are going to be taken. But I would say that each of you have a responsibility in your specific job to get beyond the assumptions or the probabilities or the waiting until you find out. Your job is to actually take what I'm going to share with you today and actually start working with ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, is it possible that AI is going to replace my job? But more importantly, even if it is, say between 2025 and 2030, as some of the predictions have it, and it doesn't matter how many blogs you read, how many news articles you read. Like I've got on my screen stuff from Business Insider, from Bulletin. I mean, you don't have to go very far. Forbes, Unmuddle, I mean, the US Career Institute. It doesn't matter. If you go looking for negative information, best believe you're going to find it. Okay. So the question isn't if as much as when, as much as I'm guaranteeing you it's going to affect your organization in a way that is going to put you in some sort of risk. There are going to be some industries and careers that are going to be far less susceptible to what is going to evolve in AI over the next 5 to 10 years. But let's be clear. Even if you find your job, your career, your title, your expertise, your craft, your degree or background in the future being on one of these lists that you might find, you have a responsibility then to figure out how to pivot, how to adjust, how to reskill yourself. This doesn't mean drop the degree and go back to school for the next 10 years, although you could. It just simply means understand what's at hand. Now, I want to get into, and I will share with you in the show notes. I think everyone should watch this video that I remember in my car. As many of you probably do, I was in my car, but I was listening to YouTube because I listen to podcasts there. And I remember listening to this video, and it was from Dr. Jiang. I hope I'm saying that name right, from Stanford Air Program. And I remember listening to it in the background because, of course, I'm driving. I'm not watching the video. And I heard him talk about three things in this video, and I'll link the video up so you can go check it out on YouTube. It was about March, I believe it was about March or April of 2023. So about 3.5 months into us really diving into ChatGPT. And don't get me wrong, before that, we were using software tools that had AI built in it. But when it opens the interface to the public, we went all in with our hands. There were three things that I took away from that video that he said very, very, very specifically. And there was one thing I'll share with you before I get into the model that I want to share with you. One thing that stuck out with me that I've repeated probably to anyone and everyone who has given me some level of concern about what ChatGPT or what AI will do to their job, their industry, their career, what their future is about. But here's what he said. Number one, our responsibility is to know how AI works, right? Know how AI works. Now, interestingly enough, back in 2018, I was on a trip and I was in an airport. I walked right by a book store like you can find in the airports. And I remember this book standing out that just jumped out at me at the time I was heading to my gate. And that book was When Machines Do Everything: How to Get Ahead in a World of AI, Algorithms, Bots, and Big Data by Malcolm Frank, Paul Rohrig, and Ben Pring. I remember picking this book up on that trip, and I read through it, and I wasn't really understanding everything, although I was like, I remember posting on my Facebook page. I'm not sure if it was on my LinkedIn or anything else, but I remember posting a picture of the book because I was on the plane, and I was like, it's time to pay attention. That was 2018. I had no idea about ChatGPT. I had no idea about OpenAI, but I was getting a gist of where the future of technology was headed. Now, I'm not a coder by trade. I have a degree in finance, and I own a marketing agency, and I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. They don't even come close. Like, I've got a background in finance. I wanted to go work on Wall Street as a trader, still love trading and finance. I spent 17 years combined in real estate, 12 years in the mortgage lending industry, co-owned a mortgage company. How in the hell did I end up in marketing? Don't know. It's just what my jam is. I know it really well. But what I do know is I've always been on the cutting edge of changes. And I want to share. So he said, A, know how AI works. Number two, know the difference between AI and human and the capabilities and the place with which we can play together. And the one thing that I talked that struck with me with what he said, and it was about the 4 or 5 minute mark in the video, maybe 6 minute mark, and I'll link it up in the video in the description. He said, AI is good at executing 1+, but humans are good at innovating the idea and the strategic thinking between 0 to 1. So I was driving in the car, and I think I had to play that back a couple of times. But he's like, humans are good at 0 to 1, the strategic thinking, the ideas, the innovation, the planning, the direction that we're going to take it. And if and where AI can do the job from 1+, you should just let it, right? You know, I remember studying in some psychology arenas about the brain and the human brain, and that at its core, and again, I'm simplifying it, overly simplifying it, but our brain has two primary functions. One of them is to keep us alive, pretty important. And the second one, in a manner of speaking, is to conserve energy, And I think there's something interesting about successful people, because successful people, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a leader, you hear about things like delegation. You hear things about finding the who, not the how, figuring out who can do it versus how to do it. You know, I remember Henry Ford. There was a story about Henry Ford way, way, way back in the day. He made no mistake in telling the world that he didn't know how to do everything in the factory. He didn't know how to do everything, but he knew he could find someone to do it. That's who, not how. And that comes from a recent book, if you want to read that book, which is fantastic, by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, Who, Not How. We'll link that up in the show notes as well. And that is you don't have to figure out how to do everything. You figure out the who. Now, how does this relate to the 0 to 1 and the innovating the ideas, the strategic thinking, the coming up with the thoughts, the setting the plan? That actually starts to tell you, how do you survive in this era of AI? And that is, you've got to get to the strategic thinking side of the problem solving for your business or your career or your craft. If the AI can do 1 plus, then you should just let it do it. A couple of reasons why. Your brain will appreciate you for it because you won't have to do all of that extra laboring when AI is perfectly capable of executing the task. Okay. So the last concept before I dive into the model that I want to share with you is that some of you are just not even in the game. You're acting as if this isn't happening. You're acting as if technology doesn't change things. You're acting as if, but at the same time, you love the technology that allows you to skip your commercials on your television. You love the technology that allows you to plug your phone in and be connected 24/7. We love the technology that allows us to play on social media. We love the technology as it relates to our consumer use. But when technology comes out, I always hear people get so afraid about what it's going to do to jobs and careers and incomes. And I'm not debating those changes, but technologically speaking, this is nothing new. It's just happening at a more rapid pace than I think any of us have ever seen in our lifetime. I don't think in history we've seen the collision of things like AI and bots. And so, for that matter, let's go with the blockchain. And what else are they talking about? Algorithms, big data. We've been marketing and advertising on social media and Google and for the last 12, 13 years. And we are letting the AI do more of our ad targeting and ad keyword bidding. But that's because the AI can. We do the strategic thinking. We do the planning. We do the direction. We choose the objectives. We're the ones who deal with the creatives. But when AI started jumping in and getting better and better, whether that's on Meta or whether that's on Google, we're like, oh, okay, we can get some hours back in our day. We can actually work with more. We can serve more people. Oh, I'm not as tired anymore because I don't have to go and run manual spreadsheets and macros and all this stuff to compute the data and the analysis. Oh, I can share that now with ChatGPT and give it what I'm going to give you here in a moment, which I think will be the takeaway for the day. And I can conserve some energy. And I can actually put my time on learning more. I can find my time in figuring out the strategy more. And so that's my encouragement. I've talked about this many times on this podcast, 3 or 4 times, and I've been a believer in this ever since I was in college. And there's a theory called the diffusion of innovations. And the theory basically describes the pattern and the speed at which new ideas, new technologies, new practices, new products are spread through a population in a marketplace, a country, or in the world. And I'll link up a link to the graph or the chart. It's super interesting. And the way it breaks down the 100% of the population is in 5 categories depicted in a bell curve. And this curve starts with 2.5% of the population being what's called innovators. Okay. These are people that are the movers, the shakers, the game changers. I mean, you look at what's happening with NVIDIA right now. You look at, what they're doing. That founder is as Steve Jobbish as they've ever been. He's as Bill Gates. He's a Warren Buffett. He is doing the thing at NVIDIA and powered obviously by AI, right? Innovators, all sorts of them. Zuckerberg, you name them. That's 2.5% of the world. The next group of people, though, are the early adopters, the 13.5% of people that are jumping into and exploring and willing to break things and willing to get it wrong and willing to explore the deep side before it becomes mainstream, which is the next 34%, which is the early majority. The early majority get involved once it looks like it's going to hit the mainstream. 34% of the population do that. So 2.5% innovators, 13%, 13.5% are early adopters. 34% early majority. Then with bell curve tips over, we got 34% also on the late majority. On the late majority, you're a little bit behind the curve. You're behind the curve. And you might be, if you're in business, that's not a place to be in business. That's not a place to be. You can't put your head down in the sand in the middle of the game. You might be winning the game. You might be winning the game. You might be killing the game. But you can't ignore the game, right? You can't ignore the way the game is being played, the way the game is changing, right? 34% on the late majority. And this group here, the last 16%, I think it's 16%. My math is a little off on the fly. They're in the category called laggards. Laggards, right? I'm in business, so I like to look at businesses that get caught up in the lagging phase. Some names you probably already know of, right? Blockbuster got blown out by Netflix, had no business getting blown out by Netflix. Kmart had no business getting blown out by Walmart. Kodak had no business not being the number one digital camera and digital company in the world of film. Some of these companies, they had no business being blown out, but they were stuck in, and I don't want this for you. I need you to hear me on this. Staying stuck in the things that we've always done, doing the things we've always done because it's easy, it's comfortable. Change is hard, change is difficult, change takes time. What if it doesn't work? Being a laggard is not where you want to be. You want to embrace this opportunity. It might look risky. It might look taxing. It might be fearful. It might be a point of uncertainty. But just like any and everything else that you've pushed through in life, I always like to say, what you've been through, you got through. Whatever that looked like as you've grown. I want to give you this framework that we've been playing with for the last, 12, 16 months. And I hope it helps you work with ChatGPT more effectively, whether you're in marketing and writing or work or everyday life or traveling but you've got to start using ChatGPT to your advantage. You've got to start using ChatGPT to its full potential. You've got to be playing with ChatGPT on a daily basis. I know that sounds silly, but listen, if you're like the average person in America, and if you're not in America, maybe you don't do this, but if you're in the average person in America, I think the study says the average American watches 3.5 hours a day of TV, and they put some ungodly amount of time on social media. All I need you to do is take a half hour out of that, take an hour out of that, and get into this idea. Okay. How do we work with ChatGPT effectively? Number one, we tell ChatGPT before we get started who we are. Number one, we tell ChatGPT who we are as we approach the dialogue, as we approach the chat, as we approach the task at hand. Who are we? Hey, ChatGPT, my name is Darrell Evans. I'm the co-founder of a digital marketing agency, blah, blah, blah. I describe who I am and what we do so that it understands where we're starting. Okay. One thing that I'll say as a caveat that I hope you're not doing, don't do multiple chats that have different objectives in the same chat. Kind of as a baseline, always start a new chat if the end task or objective changes. Okay. That might be basic. You might already know that, but I wanted to throw that in. So number one, here's the framework. Number one, start with who you are. Tell ChatGPT every single time who you are. And I know there's some people who will say, well, you can just go ahead and put that in the information if you have the ChatGPT Plus account. I get that. But I actually go one step further because I want a clean slate on the chat. Number two, tell ChatGPT the goal or the outcome of the chat. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm working on a sales campaign which will be selling a product called X, Y, or Z to this particular buyer in my database that will help them do blank. Okay. So I give ChatGPT the goal, the outcome. What would ChatGPT expect to take this path down with us? So that helps in step number two. Step number three, I tell ChatGPT what I'm going to provide in advance before we start executing outputs. Okay. A big mistake that I talk to people about is they just set it up and I see it on YouTube. I see it's on Instagram. I see it's on TikTok. Everybody's giving you a prompt. Everybody's giving you a one-liner or a two-liner. When you look at some of our prompts are this long. Some of them are even this long. And I'm not going to get into this idea of prompt engineering, but that is essentially what we're talking about. I'm not sure if there will be prompt engineering jobs in the future. I don't know. I think that's kind of a fad. I think it is important to understand how to get the right output from ChatGPT. So, number one, who are you? Number two, what is the goal of the outcome? Number three, what are you going to provide to give ChatGPT some direction, some energy? Maybe you're going to provide ChatGPT some sample writing. Maybe you're going to provide ChatGPT some data in the form of an Excel or a CSV spreadsheet. Maybe you're going to provide some background on your buyer persona. Maybe if you're working in marketing, maybe you're going to say to ChatGPT, I'm going to go to Italy and I've never been there, and I don't do well in certain conditions. I remember my brother went to Greece, and he talked about the undulations of the island of Greece. And maybe that's something I would tell ChatGPT, oh, I have this sort of physical condition. So take this into consideration before you give me the ideas. Okay. Step number four, probably the most important. And I think you've probably heard this before, but if you haven't, please don't miss this step. I would say number one is optional. I could see possibly that number two is optional, although I think you're going to get to number two anyway. But you cannot miss step number four. Step number four is, what role would you like ChatGPT to play? What role? In other words, now who is ChatGPT on this specific chat? What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm working, just because I work in the world of marketing, let me take it. If I'm working on a new marketing campaign, let's say, and it's an area or a subject matter for one of my clients that I don't have full understanding, well, I can actually begin to say, you are a senior technology officer for this industry in general, and your job is to be the chief marketing officer or chief copywriter or chief whatever. You give it a role so it knows what job to play with the other context that you're providing. Okay. I find that some people say, you just give me some writing for this marketing campaign. Give me 3 emails for this marketing campaign. Build a landing page copy for. Look, you're going to get garbage out of ChatGPT if you do that, right? So, what role do you want ChatGPT to play? It doesn't have to be long. Just explain the role. ChatGPT is smart enough to know where that history of that type of role and the definition of that role, where that lives in the model. Okay. Now, getting into the number 5, step 5, what is it tasked to do? What are you asking it to do? Be very, very specific. Also, in step 5, you want to tell them not just what they're doing, but step 6, what style should they do it in? Like, what is the style? If you need them to model that around your business, give it brand style, give it wording, give it things to say, give it a sense of, oh, I want you to do it in this style or in that style. I'm making things up. I never do this, but let's just say I wanted to do this particular style in the way that Apple might do it because I admire Apple. Maybe it's because I want to do it in the style of The Rock because maybe we like something. Like, I understand people do that stuff. I don't tend to do it because our business is our business, and we can't be imitating other brands. We are either this or we're not. So to have ChatGPT imitate, but it is important to add literary style, to add voice and tone style, to add information about your brand. Maybe that's words, style, copy, language, voice, tonality, language, all of those things. Okay. Very important in step 6. What style are they to do it in? Is it to do it in? Number 7. This is very important, and most people don't do this. What should ChatGPT not do in the output? What don't you want it to do? Okay. So we're telling it who we are. We're telling it what goal or outcome we want to get. We're telling it what we're going to provide to help out the process. We're going to ask it to play a certain role. We're going to ask it to do it a certain thing. We're then going to say, do it in a certain style, way, or language. And also, don't do this. Everyone complains about the hallucinations. Everyone complains about ChatGPT making stuff up. And guess what? It did it for me too, for months and months, and it still does it from time to time. But I've learned to just tell it what not to do. Tell it not to go make up information. Tell it not to go research the internet. Tell it not to go do this. Give it some confinement. Give it some restrictions. Okay, that's step 7. Last but not least, and this is sort of optional, but I throw it in there in step 8. And I always say, do you have any questions before we begin? So mind you, I haven't told it to do anything just yet. Now, every now and then, question 8 It doesn't stop to ask any questions. It doesn't, and sometimes it'll go right into the task. However, if you want to ask that question before you tell it what to do, just switch step 8 and leave step 5 for after. So switch step 5 and step 8, but let it answer the question. Do you have any questions? It'll tell you yes or no. Then give it the task, which is step 5. So every now and then we'll switch that and ask ChatGPT, do you have any questions before we begin? And I want to know. And let me tell you something. ChatGPT will ask you the questions if it's not clear. It is absolutely insane. It is just insane. Okay. So, in terms of working with ChatGPT more effectively, that framework is something we use on any and everything we do in ChatGPT. Now, I don't do it for things such as, hey, um, I'm planning a trip to Italy. Can you give us a general sense of tourist attractions? I'm not doing that. But when it comes to work, when it comes to output that I'm trying to lessen the load on my brain, and I'm trying to do what Dr. Jiang talked about, which is I'm trying to do my 0 to 1 work so that ChatGPT and AI can do the 1+ work. This is the model and the framework that we have found that works just so good. It just works so good. And it does take practice, and it does take intention, and it does take time to think through it. But let me tell you something. The question about whether or not ChatGPT or AI or tools or robotics are going to take your job, well, rather than spending time on that, our job is to figure out, A, how do we use the tools? How do we use the technology so that we can better our own craft? I wish I had time to get into it now, but maybe I'll talk about it on another episode. But I've got to tell you, I see it in partnership with AI and the different tools that we're using that integrate AI. I think it's imperative, whether you're a late stage career person and maybe you're nearing retirement, whether you're in the mid of your career or whether you're just getting started. It is super important to be paying attention. You must know how AI works. You must know the difference between what AI is good for and what you're good for. And you've got to know how to work with AI. All of this is what really made sense for me after listening to the video with Dr. Jiang. And I hope that what I share with you today helps you in some way. I hope that you can look back over this framework, this formula, take what works for you. If it doesn't work for you, don't use it. But I will tell you that we've been putting hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, not a day and or a week goes by where we aren't fully integrating AI into almost everything we can do at our agency. If you're a business owner listening to this, you have an imperative called the profit and loss statement in your business. And that profit and loss statement isn't just for you. That profit and loss statement is for your customers, because if you're not making a profit and your business isn't thriving, your customers won't get the service that you're trying to provide or the product that you're trying to provide. Number 2, it's for your employees. So if you're the owner of the business listening to this, you really have to do it so that you can make sure that you are giving your employees the best chances to win in your organization. Number 2A, if you're the employee, you have to do it so you can figure out how you can be more valuable to that company. Because let me be clear about one thing. In my career over 30 something years, I know that the most valuable people stay no matter what happens, because the most valuable people can pivot to another role in the company. The most valuable people will learn new skills. They will adapt and change. But if you're not willing to adapt and change, you're expendable. It just is what it is. It's just the name of the game. And step 3, as a business owner, if you're listening to this, your imperative is to make sure that business is profitable for you as the owner. That's today's episode. I'm excited about where we're heading with AI. It is a lot. Let me be clear. You've got to take some time. You got to dedicate some energy. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed this framework and this formula. Go check out the video that we're going to link up. Check out the diffusion of innovation. Figure out how you think about the diffusion of innovation as it relates to all of the latest technology that's happening right now, whether it's AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. If you're in the world where AI is coming in force, how do you get on board? How do you get better at that 0 to 1 strategic thinking? That has been my call to my team all across the board, whether it's related to our podcast, whether it's related to our marketing agency, whether it's related to our strategists, no matter who it's related to, and everybody I talk to, I will keep screaming from the roof. Get yourself good at the 0 to 1 work, not just puff and smoke. Let me be very clear. You can't just be going to ChatGPT and having ChatGPT spit out strategies. That's not what I'm talking about. Bring your experience. How do you get to the strategic level of helping your company transition into this? And then where it's possible, put AI in, put ChatGPT in, and let ChatGPT do the work from OnePlus. And today was all about ChatGPT. That's not only the tool that we're talking about. We're just saying we wanted to have this conversation because it's most prominent, most prevalent in most people's world. This could be related to Copilot. It could be related to Claude. It's related to Gemini. It's related to things that you're using. But it's such an exciting time. I'm excited about where the future's heading. I'm excited about the work we're going to do for our clients. I'm excited about the efficiencies. I'm excited about the performance. I'm excited that tools and platforms that we do our business on, whether that's partnering with Meta on Facebook and Instagram ads, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Google. I mean, yeah, it's a lot going on, and things aren't always going to look pretty as AI keeps getting involved and getting integrated and getting better. It certainly isn't perfect, but the only way you're going to maximize this opportunity is to shift your mind so you can shift your results. I'll see you again. Hit the subscribe button so you can become a part of the MindShift community. We'll help you shift your mind so you can shift your results.